And now we have some questions that have been solicited in advance in the last few days from members of the community. And I think they'll give you a chance to restate some of the important points that you've made. So we're going to begin now with Claire with the first one. And the first question is, could you address the recent legislation that passed that excludes certain industries or contractors now from Prop 22?
I will say that, so
she means AB5, right?
AB5 is, I would assume that this is a reference
No,
to AB5?
I think it's referring to the recent legislation that allows for exemptions.
Let me just kind of go back to clarify what AB5 is. AB5 is a clarification of existing law about workers' rights and what is classified as an employee, what is being classified as a contractor, and basically saying that what the California Supreme Court has decided 2 years ago, saying that if somebody is part of the major function of a company, they should be classified as an employee, if that is the core function of the company. Regarding the recent exemptions, I think that those are industries with a really long history of workers being able to have their own, basically running their own business, which is very different from what you see here in the rideshare apps, because actually their salaries, how much they're earning, is being controlled by Lyft and Uber.
Okay, Kyle?
So I think that, with that recently passed legislation, the exemptions to AB5 now exceed 110. 110 professions had to get official exemptions from this law. And we are having to put a ballot measure before California voters. I mean, I think it just proves how flawed AB5 is and how desperately it needs to be reworked. Proposition 22 seeks to strike a balance, though, between what the goals of AB5 were with the desires of what drivers want. 70% of drivers say that they want to remain independent contractors, but they also want to get paid more. Proposition 22 provides additional earnings for drivers. It adds additional benefits in healthcare and occupational accident insurance to cover on-the-job injuries and illnesses, and it ensures that they maintain the flexibility and independence that drivers so desperately want and desire.
And Kyle, are other gig jobs, excuse me, in California impacted by this proposition passing?
Yeah. Earlier today, there was a story by CBS Los Angeles talking about a app-based company called Hop, Skip, Ride. They provide transportation services for children to school, and they endorsed Proposition 22 today because their drivers are simply unable, or they're not able to continue with their business model if Proposition 22 doesn't pass. While the big guys, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, and Instacart are the sponsors of this initiative, there are other companies that are supportive of our measure and believe that without a fix, they're going to have to cease operations in California, leaving thousands of people without access to earning opportunities, as well as customers who lose access to these services.
Claire?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
The question was about other gig jobs in California. Will they be impacted by this proposition passing or not passing?
So, and actually that is one of the reasons why there is so much labor movement behind the no on Prop 22, is because this proposition will have an impact on other gig work and work in California and potentially work all over the country. Basically, Prop 22 would set a precedent of app companies or companies in general being able to exempt workers that are a core, basically their core revenue source comes from these workers, and they're going to be exempt from actually classifying them as employees. And this will definitely affect other gig work in California, other work in general in California. And this could also have a ripple effect into other states. We've seen in New York, they've passed legislation protecting workers. They have a better minimum wage there for app drivers. And if California passes Prop 22, that could have a ripple effect into these app companies being able to undo workers' rights all over the country.
Kyle?
Oh, I went first. I get to respond again.
He gets a new question.
Oh, a new question. Sorry. The new question for you is, Claire covered it a little bit, but is there any language in the proposition that may confuse voters?
Not necessarily in the proposition itself, but in the title and summary that was prepared by the Attorney General. When we filed this initiative, the Attorney General gave us a pretty straightforward explanation of what it does. But in the official voter guide, the description was a little bit different. I don't have it up in front of me, but Prop 22 was one of 7, I believe, campaigns that sued the Attorney General over the ballot title and summary being slanted against them. And so, we think that is regrettable on the part of the Attorney General. But no, I think that voters understand that Proposition 22 is going to provide additional benefits for drivers. It's going to keep these services available and affordable. And, we're confident that they're going to support us in November.
Claire?
I had already kind of discussed some of this in my presentation earlier, but there's a lot of language that sounds nice. They'll have more earnings, more safety and protection from sexual harassment, flexibility, etc. But the fact of the matter is there's nothing preventing Lyft and Uber from enacting these things right now. What they're trying to do is write themselves a special exemptions from current existing law. And those under Prop 22, the protections given to workers are actually less than if they would just follow the law and actually treat their workers as employees instead of contractors. Those protections given to workers in California are much better than the protections that are given under Prop 22. Absolutely. As I've mentioned before, Prop 22, because would exempt these app companies from paying into funds like unemployment, Medicare, Medi-Cal, all of these things, they are actually right now not paying their fair share of taxes into the state budget. And as we're seeing now with vast numbers of people applying for unemployment insurance, and actually California does have some emergency unemployment insurance funds, the federal government is providing some as well. Basically, everybody else is picking up the slack from the lack of funds provided by Lyft and Uber and these gig companies, because they are refusing to pay their fair share of taxes to the state of California by exempting themselves from being an employer for these workers.
Kyle, impact on the state budget?
The Legislative Analyst's Office, in their initial write-up of Proposition 22, said that the impact on the budget would be that higher income taxes received by the state, because more people are going to be working. These services are providing flexible work opportunities that are helping people make ends meet at the end of each month. We've already discussed at length the number of people who are, suffering from unemployment, but for so many other people that are underemployed too, these services are helping make ends meet. I'm sure that if you guys ask any of your rideshare or food delivery folks, like, hey, how is this like helping you make ends meet? They'll tell you personal stories about why they need flexibility and independence. And more than 100,000 drivers support Proposition 22 for all those reasons.
And Kyle, are there any, or could there be any unintended consequences from Prop 22?
Yeah, I think that, with all legislation, there could be unintended consequences. The measure was written, by 5 of the biggest app-based companies. And, I'm not sure, but I think that there could be other app-based companies that would be subject to the terms of Proposition 22 that could be impacted. But I think that, the overwhelming majority of the impacts are going to be better. It would improve the quality of app-based work for the drivers and ensure that for consumers that it's that these services remain available and affordable.
Claire?
As I've already kind of mentioned, by undoing labor protection laws, by saying that we don't have to pay the majority of our workers, paid sick leave, minimum wage, unemployment insurance, healthcare, workers' comp, all of this, I think, will have a ripple effect into not just the workers, drivers at Uber and Lyft themselves, but also workers in other industries and other states states. And Kyle keeps saying that drivers want flexibility, and I've already mentioned before that there's nothing in current law that actually prevents drivers from having their own flexible schedule. I myself experienced that as a substitute teacher. And so I think that the real impact of unintended consequences is going to be undoing, decades of workers' rights protections, and, of course, also just not paying into the hundreds of millions of dollars into the state fund.
Claire, how will any increased costs or medical benefit filter down to drivers or to the public?
You're saying increased costs for medical benefits. Sorry, where does a medical benefit come from?
Well, I'm just reading the question from the audience member. How will the cost of if the benefits that are paid to app drivers, will that filter down to drivers or the public?
I mean, as with all industries, it is up to the companies whether they want to actually be providing the benefits like health insurance to their workers, and it is also up to the industry and the companies whether they're going to pass down any of these costs. I think that it is a moral responsibility for employers to be actually offering health insurance to their workers. And I think in general, that is going to be, it is extremely important, especially in the time during this pandemic. And I think the cost of not providing paid sick leave and health insurance to workers is so much greater and so much more immediate when you have people getting sick because of coronavirus, not being able to stop working even when they're sick because they can't pay their bills, they can't support their children. And I think that above all, it needs to be the responsibility of all employers.
Kyle?
Sure. I mean, with Proposition 22 and, including access to healthcare for drivers that work at least 15 hours per week, which becomes the full contribution at 25 hours a week, averaging about $367 per month. There are going to be costs that are going to be passed on to consumers. Prices are probably going to go up for these services. But the alternative under an employment model means that with the smaller driver pool and hundreds of thousands of people losing access to earnings, I think that we will see impacts. The cost for these services with drivers as employees will skyrocket. And I mean, I think that, consumers are going to see a huge amount of negative impacts from the higher costs of the transportation and delivery services.
Okay, now it's time for closing statements, and we will begin with Kyle.
Proposition 22 is going to save app-based jobs and services. I think that, more than anything else, what we should, pay attention to is what drivers say they want. I mean, with 70% of drivers expressing a continued desire to be independent contractors, and Proposition 22 providing, the stronger earning fees. It's not a floor, or it's not a ceiling, it's a floor. It ensures that drivers are earning more than minimum wage wherever they're driving. It adds healthcare insurance. It adds coverage to cover on-the-job injuries and illnesses, and has broad support from nearly 100 organizations, from the business, public safety, seniors, social justice, community, religious, agriculture. I mean, the list goes on and on. Proposition 22 is a good deal for drivers. It saves hundreds of thousands of jobs and ensures that services that millions of Californians and businesses are relying on continue to be available and affordable. And we urge everyone that's on this call to vote yes on 22 this November. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. Claire?
So Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Instacart's Postmates have put $181 million into Prop 22 because they do not want to pay their employee benefits and protections and protect their drivers. They wrote this initiative to circumvent the law that requires them to treat their workers as employees rather than contractors. If app companies truly wanted to help their drivers, they would be making sure that their workers have gloves and masks and the equipment, personal protective equipment that they need and the way for them to help and protect their families and the public right now, and they wouldn't be spending all of that money to write themselves a new law. All of these drivers, 78% of whom are people of color, are essential workers. They are helping California through the pandemic, and they deserve better. We believe that the drivers, many who are Latino, Black, or from other communities of color, should have sick leave, healthcare, unemployment benefits, and the flexibility that they need for scheduling. That's why I urge everyone to vote no on Prop 22.